Well, welcome to another episode of The Deep Dive. We are finishing up our Daniel Part 1 series in this conversation, looking at Daniel Chapter 6. My name is Brad, joined today by Pastor
Belshazzar. Also known as Daniel.
It's the last time we can use that joke until, the fall, when we do
should
Part 2.
Should we have used that joke? That's probably more the question.
I don't know about the joke as much as like the irony or coincidence of, how often do we have an opportunity to do it? I don't know. I think we should have.
Not frequently.
Anyway, we are going to be wrapping up this conversation. Again, just disclaimer, recognize.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If Daniel in Babylonian is Belshazzar or was renamed, what would Brad in ancient Babylonian have been translated to? We had
it's like one of those elementary math problems where you do like a 1-to-1. Like it doesn't work at all, but for the sake of this,
well, that's right, because there were the youths in chapter 1. Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Hananiah was Shadrach, Mishael was Meshach, Azariah was Abednego, Daniel was Belteshazzar. Oh, I said that wrong. Not Belshazzar. Belshazzar was not a good dude.
Belshazzar's the crazy dude who...
Yeah. Writing on the wall, drinking in the temple, or drinking with the temple stuff.
Yeah, Belshazzar. Okay, so when you have God literally speaking to you.
Texting you direct.
DM you, and like, you're still just throwing a party?
Yeah. And
don't have the awareness that the Persians are... like, probably within a stone's throw. Like, I don't know.
Something's wrong. Yeah. That's for sure. So, Brad in Babylonian, what would that be?
Dude, I don't know.
I would, a bad Brad. A bad Brad. Maybe. Brad. I don't know. Comment below.
Some cultural misappropriation there, but...
Ooh, that's true. I'm sorry about that. That was not intentional.
Anyway,
moving on.
All right, so my disclaimer. Yes, I said this last week when we did, or last week, a couple weeks ago, when we did chapters 2 through 5. My goal was to be a little more consistent, and it's been a couple weeks, so...
That's consistent.
I will have you know, though, we've already recorded week 1 of United Together. That'll drop next week.
Dude, it's a new day.
It's a new day.
I've actually, for Daniel, I've liked this approach, Brad. Yeah. So, any heartburn at home, I sympathize with you. I hear you. I see you. But, Brad, I appreciate that we're still doing these and that we've continued to focus on all of Daniel.
Hey, listen, we want to be curious about what's in our Bible. And if we
keep the thing open.
Yeah, keep it open. If we can create, or, a more contemporary illustration, keep it on your phone, right? Now, like the iPhone now, if you don't use an app, it just like goes into the cloud.
There's something there.
So listen, if you're opening up your phone on, the YouVersion Bible app and you have to download it every time you want to use it.
Oh,
there's probably
something there.
Probably something
there.
Anyway, Daniel chapter 6. So this is going to conclude the narrative section of the book of Daniel. So the first 6 chapters are our story, their history, their God working redemptively through Daniel to be a interpreter of dreams, shows Daniel as faithful, shows Daniel in a culture very different than the one that he probably would prefer, that aligns with his religious beliefs and freedoms. And then the second half is going to be apocalyptic. It's prophetic. It's end times related. It's Son of Man language. There's a lot there. So we have intentionally separated the two. You need both of them together, I think, to faithfully understand.
That's true.
What's going on in Daniel.
But it's a lot to sit with all at once. So
it's a lot, and honestly, even just to maybe localize this a bit, I can't even imagine in this space, in this moment, jumping into the apocalyptic stuff. So anyway, it's a gift to us, I think, to give us a little bit of space to process and to read, to study, to have conversations. So in the fall, we will be doing Daniel Part 2, which will be chapters 7 through 12, focusing on some of these apocalyptic visions that Daniel documents and what it means for us in a a culture that is both incredibly fascinated by apocalyptic motifs. You just look at like movies, books, those genres, and also very fearful. And maybe we don't even want to acknowledge that there will be an end. So anyway, look forward to that in the fall. But right now, let's talk Daniel 6. So Daniel in the lion's den. This is when you think about Sunday school stories, like this is top.
Oh man, this
top
is
five?
Iconic Sunday school story.
You think top 5?
Easily.
Yeah,
it's probably top 3.
I've got 2 commentaries on the Book of Daniel, and both of them have a lion on the cover. So, which is fascinating because, like, even within Daniel, as we've seen over the last few weeks, there's way more than just him getting thrown to the lions.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Daniel chapter 6. What I want to do is look at the story itself.
Okay.
And then use kind of maybe the second half of our time or whatever time's left to get into just kind of hey, what are our impressions from these 6 chapters?
Okay.
For us. So Daniel chapter 6. Dan, you want to just give us a summary of what's going on here?
Yeah, so the Medes have just conquered Babylon, and Darius is establishing the Mede rule over this area, these people, these places.
And we talked last week about the identity of this Darius guy is there's kind of some confusion.
Sure.
Anyway, look back at last week's episode if you want more discussion on that.
Yeah, that's right. Because someone like Xerxes, who shows up in Esther and Nehemiah and Ezra, which follows shortly after these.
Yeah, the Assyrian.
But he's a well-known historical figure. But so Darius, we don't have a reason to think Darius is not real, but we also just have a hard time locating him.
Yeah, there's this like Darius and Cyrus, like who's who, what.
Sure. Okay. So they're setting up their rule, and so he decides to set up 120. It's called satraps in the translation, but we'll call them bosses.
Cool.
Governors, mayors, something. They're spread out throughout the land, and then he wants to elevate 3 as big bosses. To quote,
big bosses,
minions, big boss. And so,
you see the new Minions?
Not yet, but it's on my mind.
Yeah,
I don't know why it's on my mind.
The Rise of Gru.
Exciting. Big boss. So there's going to be 3 that would be more like provincial rulers over the 120. And then we're told that the king really likes Daniel. He again finds favor with this new king, which is also remarkable because he was close to the Babylonian kings. And so, I wonder what kind of person it takes for multiple empire rulers to look at him and say, I want him as close to me as possible.
Well, we all know those kinds of people, right? Those one of my college roommates was this kind of person where he walks into a room and instantly finds favor with everybody.
It's pretty awesome.
It's incredible. But at the same time, what we see in Daniel is, when you bring politics in, when you bring power and influence dynamics, no one was. None of these guys, at least in the Kings, as far as the narrative shows, were too intimidated, by Daniel's person, or past positions.
That's right. It's remarkable. Yeah, that's remarkable, and I think that's where maybe we can see the hand of God, and where as we read this, we understand something about being the people of God. Both in his sovereignty, but also in his purpose, and so what happens? And this really, I get why we call it Daniel in the lion's den, because it shows God's people being God's kingdom in a very different place, and God's provision, protection. He's perpetuating his name and his people. However, story-wise, if this were just being described in its plot line, this is more a story about Darius and scheming leaders in his organization, so to speak, than it is a story about Daniel. But so what we're told is that people close to Daniel, colleagues, peers, did not want to see him elevated this way. And so then their conclusion is, and this is significant, they They couldn't find any fault because Daniel was faithful. No error was found in him. So they said, and I think this is a reflexive, they said to themselves, we shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. So because he's not personally offensive, they go to like the next place. Like, well, something that he's committed to, we can make that offensive to our king. And so then they go to work and they basically propose to the king. I think it's politically motivated. They propose that everyone in the kingdom be required for a period of, I think, 30 days, right? That they pray only to the new king, to Darius. That no other god, no other ruler should be invoked.
Because in that
this
culture,
time.
If you are a king, you are essentially like demigod on earth.
You're something, you're hot stuff, and not just for celebrity status or authority. You're actually thought to be more than a man. Yeah. So the king goes along with this, and again, this is why I think it's politically motivated, because we find out later the king doesn't want to see the consequence of this fall on Daniel, but obviously he thought there was something in it, and I think they're just trying to settle the kingdom. Yeah. If there's going to be any rebellion, let's do that now, kind of thing. So he goes ahead with this. We, as the reader, know that this is going to lead to tension for Daniel and a problem. I love what it says in verse 10. The setup to verse 10 is pretty fun. When Daniel knew the document had been signed, so Daniel wasn't aloof. He was fully tuned in.
He was aware. This isn't just something that's happening behind his back.
And he goes and he does the thing that he knows is now illegal. And you even get the sense, I think, he's not doing this to spite the king. And that's a really interesting thing. Maybe something if we have a minute or two. Yeah. Because I often hear excuse me, I shouldn't say often. This wasn't Sunday school. But I do hear believers at times point to this passage as an illustration of when is civil disobedience okay, when it contradicts the law of God. Yeah. However, Daniel, for no spite for his government, and really it doesn't even seem like spite for his peers who are trying to work this against him, but only out of conviction and humility for his God does he go. And the reason I think this is because we don't hear any of Daniel's inner dialogue, which the text does not tell us that he's having a moral argument with himself. It's not telling us that he's trying to show anyone up. In fact, what we saw him do in Babylon was persistently bless the people around him, even when they were opposed to him. So I think that's carrying over here. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm reminded in this section about some of the words that Jesus has for praying in public, right? In the Sermon on the Mount, right? Okay. When you pray,
get a microphone,
right?
Get some bright lights, right? Fog.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. No, go and do it in private, right? Where your Father sees. Yeah. Culturally speaking, the Supreme Court has been very much in the news. In the limelight. We've talked about the Supreme Court more than I've ever probably considered the Supreme Court in my life. And one of the things in the past week was there was this ruling about praying in football games.
That's right. The coach that wanted to lead whoever wanted to in prayer.
In prayer. Yes. And just a fascinating kind of piece. So I've got these three things that are happening in tangent, right? We're in Daniel 6 where we see Daniel going home to pray. He's not going on the street corner and praying in public.
It's not on his feed.
It's not on his Instagram feed. Right. It's not, he's not doing a, anyway, there's more I could say about that, but he goes home.
It's not a Daniel fast.
He does it faithfully. And then you have, Jesus' words, which I think very much, Daniel's actions embody. And then you have this other thing happening culturally where Christians in the United States just really want all of our rights protected, and to the point of doing the thing in the way that's actually very contrary to the words of Jesus in Matthew 6. Maybe not in conflict with, but there's something there of...
Gosh, yeah. I remember, I'm just old enough that I heard as a child significant conversation around prayer in schools, and its removal from the school setting. And again, like with trying to be as gracious and understanding and loving and understand what was that like for someone who, as a believer, went to school one week and every morning prayed, and the next week was told we can't do that anymore. But everyone in the room, or not, everyone. That my apologies, not everyone in the room, but many in the room were believers or Christians, at least in family connection, and that's a strange shift. So I very much get like the shifting of things had to be really disorienting. A way I've been thinking about that is, okay, what would Daniel teach us on something like that? I think if we could pray in schools, we should. However, even if we can't pray in schools, we should still be praying for our schools.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Daniel is particularly instructive about what kind of persistence we're supposed to have. There's no one who could tell the believer that they cannot get on their knees and bless the people around them. I would be, I think it's an interesting, it's political, it's legal. There's a conversation in civic life about what's permissible in a public sphere that's baked into American rights and discussion. Like, our nation's going to breed questions like that.
Yeah.
For the believer, I would hope that we would advocate to influence, for things that are a blessing and good for the people around us. But I hope that we never sell out our ability to live as God's people in God's ways. So again, like my tagline is, okay, we may not be able to pray in schools, but far be it from me, shame on me if I don't take time to pray for my schools.
Yeah.
Because that is what God has given us as believers, to get on our knees or bow our heads or take a walk and to ask him for his goodness in this world.
Yeah.
And that no one can stop us from that.
Well, and I do think that there's an interesting, the whole public connection to it. I can pray in a way that nobody around me is probably even recognizing that I'm praying, right? Like a couple weeks from now, we're going to be in our 1 Corinthians series. We're going to be looking at this this idea of each believer, each individual is you are the temple, right? That you are the dwelling place for God's Spirit, and we should be living in a way where not just we don't just have an awareness of, but that we are in community with constantly. So I don't know, maybe this isn't really necessarily even a conversation on what is prayer, but this inner dialogue that I'm having, even in this space, can I direct that to the Lord as prayer, even as just thoughts? And so anyway, I guess that's for me. I get really just confused by this posture of I have to be able to pray on the 50-yard line, and that needs to be something that's protected, when I'm not sure that's in the scope here.
Yeah, it's I think whether we can or can't, and whether we advocate for or not, whatever we do, we have to do very humbly. I do think humanity always runs the risk of wanting their government to be their ultimate something.
Yeah.
And I do think we see Darius falling to that temptation, and the people around him trying to manipulate toward that end. And I don't fully understand it. But even Jesus, when his followers wanted to make him king by force in John 6, they asked him, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom? Are you going to set Israel up again? And for Jesus, he basically declined every opportunity and instead pointed to the kind of salvation that was going to come through his death and resurrection into the hearts of every people group, all who would receive him. This is a lot of what Paul, I think, had contention with was the idea that Christianity was somehow a local national thing for the Jewish people. And his point was, no, this is a borderless, this is an ethnicity encompassing faith that's for the entire world, any who would believe, which was quite groundbreaking. And I find within myself, and sometimes maybe I perceive, and maybe I'm wrong, but in friends or family, a desire for what's local to be ultimate. But we're invited to be part of a kingdom that literally can survive every other kingdom, and that will always seek blessing and always humbly follow through on its ethic. So, Daniel goes to pray, knowing that this is not against the laws, but I do appreciate your point. He doesn't go to Darius's chambers. He doesn't really, at least in this setting, he's over these other people, or he's about to be over these other people. He's got significant influence, but his biggest interest is to get back to his room and pray. There's something kind of wonderful in that.
Yeah, there's something there. So, those busters, they come and tattle on
That's your Babylonian name.
Buster
Shazar.
They tattle on him. King has probably a crisis of like, oh, I love Daniel, but I also I can't go back on decrees. I can't just change the rules every time.
It says
my
a lot.
credibility's at stake.
That's right. A lot of times it says the rules or the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be changed. You get the impression that was like a national policy for them, or an empire policy. Like if it's in law, there's no litigating out of it.
I'm sure that went really well for them in every area. But so anyway, Daniel gets thrown into a pit of lions, which
chucked.
Yeah, I think the Bible does a lot of things very, very well. Actually, everything the Bible does, it does well.
This is true. Not because it's the Bible. It's actually a remarkable feature.
I
know what you're saying.
Yes.
But this is an incredibly well designed. Like, if you want to know the creativity of the heart of God, become a biblical studies student.
Yes.
And learn what's going on in the literature and the word. Like, it's incredible.
Yes. But these are lions.
Yes, hungry lions.
Hungry adult lions. And Daniel is just thrown in amongst them.
Yep.
That's
barbaric.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I don't know. My mind goes to okay, how did they get the lions? How did they keep the lions in this pit?
Whose job is that?
It's almost like Star Wars, right? Like the guy who has to, tame the Rancor in Jabba the Hutt's palace. That's not a job I want.
That is such a great, analogy or comparison. Well done.
Yes. Anyway,
who cleans up after the lions? Do they clean up after the lions?
Maybe they clean up after themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway,
so Daniel gets thrown in. The text describes him as he hasn't been touched.
Yeah.
Right. Their mouths are shut. There is another figure that joins him, that accompanies him. I would again direct us back to a conversation we had a couple weeks ago where we were talking about even a similar thing where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego thrown in the fiery furnace. There's a fourth individual in there with him, or with them. So you see kind of God's provision over Daniel in this space. It's not a coincidence that the next morning, whenever they come, Daniel is still alive.
But it's very tentative. I love the way the text tells the story. The king rushes, he can't sleep. He tried to do what he could, couldn't change anything, has a restless night, gets up first thing, was the first one there, and he calls in, Daniel, has your God saved you? Yeah. And in my mind, or at least in my reading, there's just this, you can't help but pause to see if Daniel answers. Interestingly, Daniel does answer. That's the most interesting. The nerdy part of me also wants to point out, these are the only words of Daniel in this passage. Daniel, has your God saved you? And, I'm so sorry, I lost my place.
O King.
Go ahead and read it.
O King, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him. And also before you, O king, I have done no harm.
That's right. Those are Daniel's words.
Yeah.
King, I want the best for you. God has protected me. I am not harmed. God's shown favor on me, and I have continued to do no wrong by you.
Yeah.
Which is just remarkable.
I'll be like, dude, you threw me in a pit of lions.
We need to talk. We need to go to couples counseling,
Yes.
Darius.
Yes.
For real. Something's broken here.
Yes. And then the other men, right, who accused Daniel are thrown into the lion's den.
They become the meal.
Very quickly.
Yes.
And then at the end, we have this decree. Darius writes to all the peoples, nations, languages on earth.
Yeah. In all my royal dominion, people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed. His dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders on heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing that God not only worked Daniel's provision, but God brought an awareness of his name and his power to a people who by every stretch of the imagination would be classified as like a heathen people from a Jewish perspective.
Yep.
But it's like God's desire is to be known, not to be hidden, and not even to be known in a way that crushes another people, but to be known as the Savior and the Rescuer in the name above all names.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Amen. Well, we've got about 2 minutes or so. Reflections on the narrative section as a whole.
It's wonderful. May I hijack that?
Go for it.
Minute and a half. One of the most interesting things to me, and this is me just thinking, and I don't know to what degree I'm right. So those are my qualifications. But when we pick up the story in Ezra and Nehemiah, and we pick up the stories in Ruth, and we see other interactions with the Persians, especially where Israel is allowed to go home, I just think there's such a strong connection here. God has not only worked for Daniel, he's not only worked so Darius could know his name and the people could hear. He's worked in a way so that there comes this moment in a little bit of time from now where God is going to send his people out of formerly Babylon back home in not just peace, but also in a position to rebuild, just like the prophets Jeremiah and the others had said and predicted. And it's like God's hands over the global stage are so remarkable, but they play out in such everyday stories, power politics at a job and the faithfulness to just keep getting on your knees and praying. And all of that somehow adds up to, God continuing to move his story of redemption forward in this world.
Yeah.
It's pretty beautiful.
Anyway, so good, man. Well, looking forward to part 2 this fall. We are starting a new series called United Together this next week. We're looking at different snippets from 1 Corinthians and applying how can we as a church find unity, pursue unity in different facets. So looking forward to that. You can find this deep dive on our website, calvary.church/resources. You can find future deep dives and other resources there as well. And as always, if you have a question that you want to, see us wrestle with, shoot us an email at podcasts@calvary.church. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you again next week.
And for any Babylonians out there, I apologize if I said something inappropriate in trying to name Brad. I would love your help with that.
Yes.
Take care.
All right, see y'all.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive, a Calvary Church Media Productions podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts.